Good morning. Welcome to another session on environmental impact assessment.
So we shall continue with Unit 2, Methodologies. Course outcome, elucidate the methods of EAA with case studies. Learning outcome, discuss the methods used in EAA. And the specific outcomes, explanation of the checklist method of EAA. So far we have seen the ad hoc method of EAA. So in this session we will see the um explanation about the checklist method of EAA. So checklists, right? So I already told in brief what the checklist method is, right? You have a list of items and you go on just checking those things whether the thing that particular parameter has been covered or not, right? So there are two types of checklists. One is simple checklist, the other one is descriptive checklist. So the simple checklist represents a list of environmental factors which should be addressed. However, no information is provided on the specific data needs, methods for measurement or impact prediction or impact assessment, right? We are simply listing down the environmental factors with no other information. That is simple checklist. Descriptive checklist refers to the methodologies that include list of environmental factors along with information on measurement, impact prediction and assessment, right? So here we are not just looking at the environmental factors, we are also going to look at the measurement of the impact prediction, impact assessment. So that is what happens in descriptive checklist. So descriptive checklist is superior when compared to simple checklist. Scaling and weighting, apart from the simple and descriptive checklist, you got something called scaling and weighting checklist, right? So scaling and weighting checklists inherent in the latter types of checklist facilitates decision making, right? So superior to the descriptive checklist is the scaling and weighing checklist, which helps you to make uh, easy decision making. Such checklists, apart from being strong in impact identification, also incorporate the functions of impact measurements and to a certain degree of interpretation and evaluation. And it is those aspects that make them more amenable to decision making analysis. So there are four types of checklists. One is simple checklist, second one is descriptive checklist, third one is scaling checklist, and the fourth one is weighting checklist. So we'll be seeing each of these checklists in a little more detail, right? So the first one is just simply listing down all the environmental parameters or factors. The second one is apart from listing down the environmental factors, we are trying to give some information about those factors, right? The third one and the fourth one are little more superior compared to the descriptive checklist. Why? Because they help in decision making. The reason is there is something uh, that is related to impact measurement, impact identification, interpretation, evaluation. All these things are included. So hence it helps in easy decision making process. Scaling and weighing checklists, while capable of quantifying the impacts reasonably well, right, albeit using subjective estimates, make no provision for assessing dynamic probabilistic trends or for mitigation, enhancement, and monitoring programs. So they are only capable of identifying the impacts, right? But there is no provision of uh, dynamic probabilistic trends, right? We cannot find out what will be the trend of the impact, whether it is going to increase, decrease over time, whether there is possibility of mitigation, whether there's possibility of monitoring programs. All these things will not come in the scaling and weighing checklists. Identification of higher order effects, impacts, and interactions are outside their scope. So they don't deal with higher order effects, meaning the secondary impacts, tertiary impacts. Those type of things cannot be found out in this particular method. Even in scaling and weighing, that is not possible. What are the secondary and tertiary impacts? You may be thinking what that is. I think I already discussed about that in the earlier sessions. For those of you who are not gone through that or you don't remember that, primary impact is, for example, you are dumping some effluents into the water body. So the primary impact is water quality is degraded. Secondary impact is aquatic species are affected and they may die. Tertiary impact will be the human beings consume these fishes and they get diseases and so on. But simple and descriptive checklists do not offer this. They merely identify the possible potential impacts without any sort of rating as to their relative magnitudes. So while scaling and weighing checklists are capable of identifying the impacts, right, and they give more information about the impacts, the simple and descriptive do not offer this, right? They are simply identify the impacts without any sort of giving any magnitude, right? In case of scaling and weighing, what we do is actually we give some weightage to the impact, meaning we say that, you have two impacts A and B. You say that B has more weightage when compared to A, meaning the impact of B is little more heavy when compared to A. Something like that is done in scaling and weighing checklist, which is not done in simple and descriptive checklists. In checklist methods, impacts will be tabulated in the form of cells with information either in the descriptive form, which gives information of the possibility or possible existence of an impact, while in the scaling or weighing methods, the magnitude or importance of the impact is also provided. Right. So, as we discussed in the last slide, right, the scaling or weighing method gives importance or magnitude to the impact, while in the simple and descriptive, you are simply getting the list of the impacts, and in descriptive, maybe a little more description about the impacts. That's about it, right? Simple checklist presents a list of environmental factors to be considered in construction and operation phases. The checklist also includes information on mitigation, but not in detail, right? So this is an example of a simple checklist that was developed for the Husai Thel Noi Road project, right? So in 1980 by the National Environmental Board, right? So probably I guess this project is not in India. It is somewhere in, maybe some other foreign country, maybe some neighboring countries, right? So we'll just focus on what the simple checklist is rather than thinking about where the project is, right? So um, they have categorized the impacts into two types: adverse impacts and beneficial impacts. Adverse impact is negative impact, beneficial is positive impact, right? And they have listed down all the factors on the left hand side, that is aquatic systems, aquatic ecosystems, fisheries, forests, terrestrial wildlife, rare and endangered species, surface water hydrology, meaning whatever water that is above the land surface or on the land surface, to say, not above the land surface, on the land surface, the quality of that surface water, groundwater that is below the ground level, soils, air quality, navigation, transportation on land, agriculture, socio-economic aspects, aesthetic aspects. So these are the factors that are getting affected by the project, right? So now what they are doing is they have again categorized the impacts into short term, long term, reversible, irreversible, local, normal, sorry, local and wide, right? In case of beneficial, short term, long term, significant, and normal, right? So then what they're doing is they're simply ticking off, which parameter or which environmental factor comes into long term, which environmental factor will come into short term, which environmental factor is reversible, will come under reversible impact, which one will have irreversible impact, right? So that's what they're doing. And you can see that in groundwater, since it's a road construction project, obviously the water will not pass into the ground surface and your groundwater will not be recharged, so they just put a star over there indicating that it is neither positive impact, neither there will be any groundwater recharge, nor it is going to decrease because of this project, right? So neither positive nor negative, so they just blocked all those things there. In case of all other impacts or all other environmental factors, they have some mapping of these factors to some positive or negative, right? So in, you see in all the categories there is some mapping either to the positive or to the negative, and you can see that most of the environmental factors are mapped to the negative, and only a few of them have been mapped to the beneficial or positive impacts, right? So the positive impacts come in transportation, agriculture, socio-economic, and aesthetics, right? So uh, we'll stop with this session here. We will continue on descriptive checklist in the next session. Thank you.
Thus, we come to the end of this session. Thank you for your participation. Looking forward to meeting you in the next session.